This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
When you want to have fun and have scratchers to scratch, there's a playful way you can do just that. Scratch with the key or acrylic nail. Scratch with the quill from a porcupine tail. Use a belt buckle from your friend Lamar. Or scratch with your pick while you play guitar. You can scratch in a bunch of different playful ways. Scratchers from the California Lottery. A little play can make your day. Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system. If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served. Hi, I'm Detective Dave. I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood. So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished. From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, we are so excited because we love this movie. We've talked about it on the podcast before. We saw it in theaters. We are so excited to have the Chad Gets the Axe director, Travis Bible, here with us today. Because Chad Gets the Axe is coming out very soon, everybody. And actually, no, as of the publication of this podcast, it's out, I believe. And we have sung this movie's praises for months. So now you can finally watch it. Travis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here and relive some horror memories.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, we both saw this at Unnamed Footage Festival where we served on the jury. And this was honestly, this was my favorite movie of the fest, to be perfectly honest. I loved this movie.
Thank you. Yeah, were you, did you find yourself reading the comments more or watching the movie more?
Okay,
so the first time I watched the movie, and then I have a screener for it, or I had a screener for it, and I watched it like a week after I got back from San Francisco, and then I paid a lot of attention to the comments.
Oh my god. The comments are so... Well, first of all, before we jump into talking about the specifics, can you tell our listeners who may not be familiar a little bit about what Chad Gets the Axe is all about?
Chad Gets the Axe. It's about 4 influencers who go to visit a supposedly kind of haunted location where a bunch of murders occurred from a satanic cult back in the day, and they're going to live stream it. And then, surprise, it turns out the head of the satanic cult is still there and then hunts them down on their live stream and kind of tries to eliminate them one by one. And that's the synopsis. But yeah, it's all told like a live stream. It's all kind of shot like that. So you got your comments, your likes, your emojis, and a lot of the kind of screenlife stuff going on in between too. And that's, kind of the take of it.
Send feet.
Send feet.
The feet pic.
Sometimes I just text Terry send feet, and it sounds out of context really awful, but it's just because we love the comments in the movie, so we are quoting your movie in our text to each other. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. The lead actor's little brother was kind of my Gen Z consultant, and I showed him.
That's so good.
And So I like showed him, he's going to love that I just mentioned this in the podcast. So I showed him a cut and he was like, it's actually pretty good, pretty close, but it's like, there's not enough pervy stuff like show feet. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what that means. He's like, well, it's a thing that younger people do. I'm like, I love it. I'm going to make it a thing. I'm going to make the username Peter PP to be as immature as possible. And then we're going to have a show feet guy. And he's like, all right. So I'm glad that tracked with y'all.
It really did.
I think the whole thing about this movie that is like, this is if not one of my favorite influencer horror movies, because I think you hit a realism. Like they don't feel like they're unlikable, but they're not, you make them a little bit more dimensional and you give them more than just like vapid influencer, but more. Plus the comments, you really hit this like digital horror so well. And I'm curious about like why this format and what about the screenlife live stream format was like called to you for this movie?
I'll give a slightly longer answer. Like I've always kind of liked found footage stuff. Like I love Blair Witch. That just at the time blew my mind. Like that was so cool. And then in the back of my head, honestly, for a while I was like, well, what if you did like a reality TV thing that was kind of back in the aughts or, like do that this with a reality television type format. It never kind of crystallized like into anything yet. And I still, then all those movies, like, have you ever seen like Grave Encounters?
Oh yeah. Oh, you're talking to a person whose found footage is literally everything to her. So, oh my God.
Okay. So that was really cool. And I'm like, well, they did that. Well, I love Paranormal Activity. And then a certain influencer thought it would be appropriate to film a dead body. And that kind of like made me think like, this made me feel really weird. And like, I feel a little disconnected with Gen Z, but I kind of want to approach it as a millennial. And I did a short film and that was also called Chad Gets the Axe. And that was just like a 10-minute, 11-minute version. For that one, really hit hard on it kind of being one continuous shot. Mm-hmm. The actor, Spencer Levin, so talented, but I basically made him do like 3 4-minute takes back to back. And then so it was very little editing at the end for the short. And put that together, put all the comments in. And, even for 11 minutes, me and the post-producer, Mike Nicholas, were like, dude, this is hard. There's a lot of comments. And we put it out. It played really well. Festivals, Vimeo pick, and some other awards, which was nice. That helped me get some interest and some financing for the feature. And the thing was the feature, which had to make sure it was not boring, that expand it, and that's why I added 4 characters to it. And I just really wanted to, I guess, do 2022, 2023, whatever Blair Witch project, and how do you do found footage these days? And I kind of think influencers and streaming is the way it would go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of like touched on this, and I'm curious how it worked for a feature. How did you? Because I can only imagine how exhausting it would be to try to make because the chat is running constantly through this. How did you create like almost a second story that was happening in there and keep it interesting and funny and engaging for the entire runtime?
Well, one thing that was really important was to have different voices, and that's what I pushed me and the co-writer, Kimmerton Hargrove. I was really like, dude, this can't just be what you and I, elder millennials, would be in the chat. Like, there's all kinds of people with Kimmerton, brilliant writer, but I kept being like, dude, your grammar's too good. Like, this is not. And he's like, okay, got it. Like, you're being too clever. Like, we can have some clever, but we gotta, mix it up. And I'm sure he loved it when I'm like, show feet. This will be great. But anyway, so it was just kind of attacking it from a couple different ways. And first off, the comments, even though you think we would have learned from the short, we're like, oh, maybe it won't be as hard this time. Kimmerton and I think, wrote 20 pages in the screenplay of comments, right? That sounds like a lot. And we get there, and that was like 15, 20% of the movie. So we're like, oh, shit. So we had to then go write a bunch. I would say at the end, we wrote 80 to 85%. And then we started outsourcing, like sending rough cuts, like use any voice you want. You'll see like additional comments written behind the credits. So we got some people to help us.
Smart. Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah. Taking one or two, getting different voices. We tried to write as different voices, but it was good to get, some variety of people, ages, backgrounds to do some comments. And and then from there, things just kind of came up. Like we actually did a Gen Z focus group because that was my main concern. It's like I wanted this to be authentic to Gen Z, and not then be like, no, people would never say this. So we did that. And one thing I got back was some of the people wanted more of the mythology, but the movie had already been shot. But what's cool about this is that the comments are kind of a cheat code too. So it's like, well, I could make someone called Murder Maven, give her a check mark so you pay attention, and then create this character that just goes through the entire movie explaining all the mythology of the cult. And so stuff like that. And I think I told you the Peter PP showing feet, stuff like that. And
that's so cool though. That's so smart. Like, what a cool way to use the format, like, to your advantage. Like, and being like, oh, cool, how can I creatively take this note? And also, it's cool because that ties into, I think, a lot of when you, are on a TikTok live stream or something, and you see someone trying to be the expert, and that is, the verified mod or whatever jumping in. It's cool that was added in because it felt so natural to the flow of the chat. So that's cool to hear that it was added after the fact. That's so neat.
Yeah. In the ending credits, I was like, what if we put some faces to these people doing the comments? And so we, at the last second, did casting. I don't think people even knew what they were reading for. Like, so when do we fly on set? I'm like, no, you're just at the end. But you're kind of a main character. I'm like, okay.
I love found footage. It's so good. Oh, it's such a weird format. It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Well, I would also love to hear how, because I know that you worked with Spencer Levin before with the short. How did you find him? Because he is such a douchebag. He's so good at playing a douchebag. I wanted to punch him, and I love it. And I'm curious, how'd you find him? How, where did you find him? What was that casting process like when you first met him?
For the short, we had a lot of people read were really kind of channeling maybe like a Paul brother or one of the other bigger influencers, because it wasn't straight. It was a amalgamation. It was like a couple different influencers. It wasn't just one.
Yeah.
And these people did it well, but they weren't quite hitting right. My friend had just produced and directed a web series, and he had this guy, he's like, I have this guy I think can work for it, but he played like the nicest, most well-rounded guy in this web series. And I'm like, dude, I don't think so. And he's like, just let him read. And he read, and he did well. He really nailed kind of the the part at the more sentimental, sad part at the end or whatever. And he wasn't quite there douche-wise. So I literally called him, and I'm like, hey, can you just do one more read and just go full douche? And he's like, sure. And I think he put on these ridiculous sunglasses and walked around his pool, and sent me something just totally douchey. And I'm like, all right, he can do it. And he's just so talented. I can do a quick aside. Are y'all into sci-fi or old Star Trek or anything at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My experience casting was this. It was something like that Mirror Mirror episode where the evil people have the goatee.
Okay. Yep.
It was like Kirk said something that it's easier for a civilized person to pretend to be a savage than a savage to pretend to be civilized. And that's what I kind of found with the casting. I felt like the people who were kind of that alpha person, influencer vibe naturally were having trouble bringing it back around to, oh, this guy's likable, maybe is just confused and stuff like that. And so I think it worked. And Spencer was great. He did such a good job, and him and all the actors. I mean, he was on board first, but
they're so good. You had an incredible cast. That Michael Bonini, he was. I wanted to just caress his small young face as Steve.
Such a cutie.
Such a cutie.
And so good.
Yeah, he was great. He read for one of the toxic frat boys first. And I'm like, I think you can do more, and it took him a second. He's super talented, but it took him a second to get the part because he can play alpha so well. And I'm like, no, man, this guy's confused. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so, stutter more. And then I had to tell Spencer, I'm like, look, Michael's a little bigger than you, but you need to alpha. There needs to be no question. So get in his face. Don't let him run the stream. And they both did a great job. And then Tanisha and Cam also as Spinnifer just totally killed it as well. So it's like,
oh my god, oh my god, Spinnifer.
I'm curious how this kind of all came together. Did you used to watch a lot of YouTube, or do you watch a lot of YouTube? Because the thing that like surprised me, and I think I really found this like around maybe 2018, 2019, when like right before the pandemic and into the pandemic, I was watching a whole lot of YouTube videos, and then you would see like a lot of these personalities. And so I'm kind of curious, because what I really enjoyed about this film is the way in which I'm looking at these characters and I'm like, I can see direct correlations to people that I've seen or the people that have been in the periphery of YouTube. And so I'm just kind of curious about your like relationship with YouTube stars like this.
I honestly wasn't that into it, so I did research. I really tried to figure out and see, because Rolling, they are big enough where they hit. Like, I vaguely heard about Emma Chamberlain, so I kind of did a deep dive with her, and I thought certain aspects, especially the old school stuff where she was still kind of coming up and had this girl next door, I kind of thought that was cool and was some of that stuff. And I created like a TikTok account and was, just following like way too many people in their early 20s. My wife is like, looking like, what are you doing on that?
No,
like,
it's embarrassing. When I look at I love TikTok. I unabashedly love using TikTok. I really just watch, but the number of people I'm like, these are 22-year-olds. Like, I need to throw my phone into the sun. It's just very strange.
Yeah, so I've tried to see what they're all doing, following some of the most, like, there's good people. Like, Mr. Beast is, like, legit and funny and I think a good guy. And then there's a lot of people that maybe aren't, but I'm following those. And yeah, so I tried to just get an authentic sense. And then, it helps too when you cast people around the age of the characters. So they were there to help me and, make sure what they were saying was accurate and stuff like that. So yeah, that was the dive. I think the worst story I had when I first created TikTok is I did feel like a parent on Facebook or something. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm just trying to figure out like what, you can literally look up like Gen Z slang and stuff. And I'm like, let's see what it's doing. I just clicked on a live thing or something. And I joined, dude, they might've been 17. Anyway, it was a group of like 15 people pre-gaming that were probably in high school or at least oldest freshman in college. And this is when I first created it. And then they're like talking and I'm like, this is cool. For a minute or two, I'm almost like taking notes, seeing, they actually do use bet. They said capping. I'm like, this is cool. And then, they're like, who is Travis Bible? And I'm like, oh crap, they can see this. And so like, I immediately left the chat and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get arrested. I need to be careful now. Like, I'm like,
taking notes? You're like, I swear to God, it's not as creepy as it looks. I'm taking notes on these kids drinking underage. Cap, yes. Bet, okay. Yeah. Riz, sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, but got the research in, yeah. And, I still, now I use TikTok. I feel like I'm using TikTok a lot now, and I do feel slightly cooler than because once again, most of my friends are kind of mid 30s or older, and they're all Instagram. So I'm like, I know I'm like, oh, you're going to hear this one in a few weeks. I'm on TikTok.
I make that joke all the time. I'm like, oh, I saw that on TikTok weeks ago to my Instagram friends. I started crying about a cat I follow on TikTok yesterday. Like, it's a problem. Like, it's a problem. Like, it's an addiction. But that's
follow a cat.
A cat, yeah, a little baby cat. I've just gotten like attached to a cat, a kitten on TikTok, as you do.
Have you done the cat spin video yet?
No, my cats are not fans of getting picked up. So I think if I tried to do that, I would get gravely injured. So I haven't tried it yet.
Sorry, I'll try not to deviate too much into cat talk.
No, absolutely. We love it. We love cat talk.
We love cat talk. We do.
I am curious, now that you have made a found footage movie, and besides having to write a million comments, what's the hardest part about making a found footage movie?
I mean, you said that, besides the comments, that's, I think you don't have certain devices that standard horror movies have. Like I've already watched a lot. I'm a big fan of found footage stuff, but especially before making the feature, was looking at how the scares worked and different things from paranormal activity to grave encounters, stuff like that. And you really, to get that jump scare, that mood, you have to have a really loud sound effect because you're not going to have a prominent score and like a string hit or a sound effect. So making sure the scares would land. And then also, you don't, it is, don't get me wrong, it took a lot of editing to make that movie and make it seem like one stream, but you can't necessarily do like rapid cuts or at least the way I was editing mine. It had to feel authentic. That being said, we ultimately did do a score. We tried a version without it, and we ultimately, a couple producer friends were like, we should try something and just make it organic. And I worked with a super talented composer, and he was like, he got the vibe, and he was literally dragging the axe in his basement, recorded that sound, and then made organic sounds. So, half the people were like, "Oh, there's a score in that," and that's exactly what we wanted. Like,
I was going to say,
I was literally just thinking that.
I was like, I don't remember there being, because I'm a pain in the ass with found footage. I'm like, is there non-diegetic music in the movie? And I don't necessarily disparage a movie for that, but I'm always curious. So there's a score?
I was trying, No, Brian Deming did, and it's amazing. And I'm kind of you guys are into it, so you're worth, like, not many people want to geek out about this, but I'm trying to abide by the rules, right? So it's like, the short didn't have a score, the feature did. I'm like, I can't have a score, but then I'm also doing screenlife, and so technically if you were watching, you wouldn't necessarily see these text messages. So I'm already fudging a little this way, then, I think I was like, I can get away with a score. But yeah, it's made from crickets, it's made from dragging it, it's made from breathing. It's this bass type thing, and it just is subtle, and it picks up more and more as the movie goes on. So
see, now what I love about this movie, and this just conversation just like solidified that, is that every time I watch it, I feel like I'm paying attention to something else. Now I really want to go watch it and just listen to the score. Cool. That's amazing. Whoa. So you mentioned found footage, you mentioned Blair Witch. Can you take us back? How did you get introduced to the horror genre?
I think it might have been Night of the Living Dead. So my mom used to take me to the library.
Okay.
And, you're supposed to read books there, but they also had some VHS tapes. And she, for a reason, let me rent Night of the Living Dead, I think in like first grade or something. This is actually going to lead really nicely to, anyway, so I watched that, and, it was really scary. It was good. My mom, whatever, was okay with it. And then I kind of got on like a horror kick in elementary school, which honestly, to me, was the best time to watch like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, because they're actually scary when you're 8 years old. And they're more funny when I rewatch them. So that's what I was into as a kid. Like, we watched every Nightmare on Elm Street, every Friday the 13th, bunch of the Night of the Living Deads, like those kind of serial type stuff. And then, I think the horror, it kind of evolved by the time you hit like Blair Witch, which is really unsettling. And then just, I don't know, I kind of just, not just found footage, but kind of kept watching it because it's, I love Scream back in the day. Mm-hmm. There's just so many different types of horror. It's such a great medium. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was like an ultra fan, but if I was going to go see a movie, it was either going to be like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, as it went, or like The Strangers, which was also really creepy. So yeah, I think I've just kind of, I don't think I have an exact genre. I'm usually not like ultra gory type person. Okay. Like, I do like Evil Dead, and so, like I do like that stuff, but I don't seek that out as much. I prefer kind of your found footage or like The Strangers, kind of creepy, like The Stranger's motivation. Why are you doing this? Because you're home. I'm like, that's fucked up, and that's
yes.
I love that, and yeah, and now it seems it's where we are now, right? It's like if you're going to see a good movie, it's either going to be, you can either go see Marvel or a horror movie, and I was not in line to see what's out, like not Quantum, whatever Marvel, whatever's going on. We saw Talk to Me instead. So,
yes. What'd you think of Talk to Me?
It was good. It was well made. It was a little darker. Once again, I'm just getting old. I'm becoming a wuss. I'm like, I thought it was very well done, but
it's a dark movie.
I didn't the self-mutilation stuff. I'm kind of like, I would love that. I would eat that up in my 20s. Now I'm kind of like, all right, is it okay to close your eyes when you're, like, I'm like, maybe
you got nothing
I'll look
to
away
prove.
for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was, I did love it, and it was very cool. So, There's a lot of fun. Like, was it Bodies a while ago? Like, there's, when you can mix in some levity with your horror, that's the way to go, I think.
Yeah.
So I was curious with you bringing up levity in the horror, but also because Chad Gets the Axe is a horror comedy. Do you prefer horror comedies?
I think so. I don't know. It depends, because I love Hereditary. I love Midsommar. Apparently Ari Aster thinks those are funny, so maybe I'm just, maybe
you are not the only person. I have 2 friends who think it's the funniest movie they've ever seen. It's kind of weird, but you know what?
When you see it with the audience, they just did a screening of Hereditary and we went and saw that, and the director was there, and everyone was cracking up, and I'm like, well, maybe it was kind of fun. It was the 3rd time with the audience, so it's kind of like, but yeah, to answer your question, I think I lean a little more towards it, but because I don't know, I think it doesn't have to be like hilarious type thing, I'm not actually. I did like scary movies stuff back in the day, but not necessarily that level.
Right,
of, But I like it. Even Scream. Part of the reason it keeps me, it's cool, but I like the self-aware. I like it's not that serious. Like that's the type of stuff I'm looking for. And I don't know if Chad gets. I think Chad Gets the Axe is still more horror comedy than comedy horror, but it's that line is fun.
It is a fun line. And I do think there's like a weird balancing act where it's like, are you leaning more into the comedy or leaning more into the horror? And there's only a few movies that I feel like balance that incredibly well, but it's tricky. So I'm always curious when people are making a horror comedy, because I'm like, how that line is just, I don't know, it seems really very fine for me.
Yeah. And with ours, it's weird because we knew we were going to have comments. So it's like, how funny are the characters? And there's some good lines in there, but I knew if they're too funny, then it could take away from the comedy of the comments. Mm-hmm. Like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Beavis and Butthead. You can't, if you're doing that commentary, if the source material is actually already really funny, it doesn't quite work. And so there's some good lines in there that the characters are doing, but yeah, it's finding that right
balance
amount to leave some of the humor for the comments and the meta commentary we're doing with everything.
So before we talk about your movie choice, I do want to know what was the last movie that truly scared you, that got under your skin? It's you either want to say like Midsommar or. Wait, am I pronouncing that right? I don't know. Midsommar. I don't think it really matters.
I say Midsommar.
I don't want to be like.
I say Midsommar too.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy. Yeah, but that being said, I mean, I just told it talk to me, dig into my skin for better or worse. Like it had some darker themes in it, and it's like, whoa, this is there was some really intense stuff going on with that movie. So it did stay with me. My wife's like, why did you bring me to this? I'm like, I don't know. Look, these guys did Star Wars versus Harry Potter. It's going to be hilarious, They're like
but there you go. YouTube creators that would go on to make something incredibly fucked up that just doesn't seem like it's in their wheelhouse, and yet here we are.
Dude, yeah, very tight, very fun use of the protagonist, whether they're antagonists. But anyway, So the honest answer, I guess it would Talk to Me, which I just saw in theaters a few weeks ago, and it did stay. It did stay with me just because there's just pivots all of a sudden, and it's just like this is fucked up.
I really want to revisit it. I haven't seen it since Sundance. I saw it at Sundance, and then I haven't seen it since then. So I'm like, I really want to revisit it to see how well it holds up, because in my mind it was like one of my truly terrifying experiences watching a movie.
Yeah, it's still there. So yeah, it's just
hell yeah.
Okay, so Travis, we've talked to you about your horror history and Chad Gets the Axe, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
We have Return of the Living Dead 2.
2? All right.
Yep.
So for those unfamiliar, in Return of the Living Dead 2, curious kids unearth the barrels that previously helped revive the dead, which proves the second time's an undead charm. Thank you, IMDb.
Is that IMDb?
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot
writing
of things...
original content? No, not today.
There's a lot of things I find weird about that summary, but I do want to hear your first time watching this movie, Travis. How old were you? How did you see it? Why is this your Scarred for Life pick?
fits back in because, Night of the Living Dead, Public Library, which was a really good film that holds up. Return of the Living Dead 2, perhaps not. But so I was like watching all of them, and I'm like, all right, I got to see. And my mom also just basing it on, well, she had seen Night of the Living Dead. She's like, oh, these are fine. And then so I rented the second one, which was interesting. And then I did this one. I think I was 8 years old when I saw Return of the Living Dead 2. And at the time, when you're young enough, it was really scary and still funny at the same time. It was kind of like they were going for kind of like a Goonies vibe, I feel like, and like a Goonies horror movie, and it just really worked for me because I think the protagonist, I think it's a kid that's like 10 years old or something, and he's battling zombies, and the zombies looked, once again, as an 8-year-old, the zombies looked fucking scary. It's people getting like turning into zombies or whatever, getting sick and turning into zombies, which, gave me nightmares, and the part where the bully eats the mom's brains. We can touch on that more later, but that with the braces. And so that, it scared me. But what's funny about that movie is I've seen it as a kid so many times, is it scared me the first time. But when I revisited it, like even just 9 or 10, I was able to recognize like, oh, this is just kind of funny. This isn't like terrifying, so it didn't take long to hit that. And then at 10, I'd show it to all my friends, and we just watch it again and again, and we go around talking about it on the playground. And go, you saw a rated R movie? Like, I'm like, yeah.
You were the cool kid. You were the cool kid in the playground. You were telling them about the rated R movies your mom let you watch. You were so cool.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Wait, so you had seen the first one before you saw the second one?
The first Return of the Living Dead?
Okay, so that one did this one scare you more than the first one because there was a little kid in it?
I think it might have hit me more with the little kid. So
cool.
I think Return of the Living Dead, the first one was just not my thing or whatever. But the second one, yeah, like I said, I think it's the kid.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what really.
Well, and it's definitely like sillier, that's for sure, than the first one. And maybe that silliness was resonating more with the younger kid because the first one's scary. I think the first one's really scary. Like scary in a way that's like very existentially fucked up, of that like when you are dead, you are in pain constantly, and the only reason they eat brains is so they don't feel pain anymore. And like that to me is just so horrendous.
Yeah.
And then in this one, I think they try to do that, and they have them like constantly moaning in pain, but it's also very silly.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, if we're gonna go on silly, it's you got a decapitated head saying, get this screwdriver out of my head. Like it's absurd. I think Michael Jackson imitator
shows up at one point.
It's ridiculous. And the rewatching it now, I was like, okay, it was one of those things where it's like, oh well, 10-year-old Travis and older Travis aren't quite aligned on what's scary anymore, but.
Yeah.
I can see that though, because the first one is very much like the punks in the cemetery, and it's really cool because it's punk rock as fuck. But when you're a kid, you're like, I don't really. Well, some kids might be punk rock as fuck, but like a lot of kids aren't as familiar. And having this one be framed, at least at first, like a kind of gateway horror-y, like latchkey kid movie.
Yeah.
I feel like that, like you said, like Goonies. Like it has that kind of trying to have the kids getting into trouble while the mom isn't home vibe, and kind of hitting. It feels like it's more trying to hit that trend, like on trend, but also using the zombie movie, and it's not successful, I would say. But it's an interesting attempt.
Yeah, right. Wouldn't you want to see the Stranger Things kids like battle some zombies or
yes, I would. Absolutely.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like it definitely again, like at the end, you got like Dana Ashford driving the truck, and the girlfriend, and the little brother, and the old guy, and like we're all like it's got that like that end of an 80s movie vibe, but it just doesn't. it doesn't always come together for me, but I do like I like the idea of what they were like going for in terms of like kind of, again, that trend they were trying to kind of hit on with the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, they took it a different angle, and yeah, it just was, and even rewatching it, I'm like, the kid's really a big part, then he's kind of like put to the side for a while, and then there's those, some super annoying characters in between that you're just rooting to become zombies, and it's just, it's got a lot of stuff going on, so I'll give it that. I think the director took a big swing. He maybe didn't connect completely with that swing, but in theory, Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead is a great
It is
idea.
a great idea, absolutely. So there's a lot of things I want to say about this movie. The first, I guess I'll start. I remember seeing the cover of this movie at the VHS store, at the VHS store, at the movie. What are words? I remember seeing this at the Blockbuster or the Hollywood Video, and this cover was just always so gripping to me, because it's like there's a graveyard and there's like this smoke cloud coming out that's forming into a zombie face, and I remember seeing this and going, wow, I want to see this movie so bad as a kid. And to contrast this with, I think, the first movie, now as an adult, I love the cover of the first movie with the punk rock zombies on it. But this one, for me as a kid, was like the one, I must see this movie. And my parents wouldn't let me watch it. And so it wasn't until much later that I was able to like watch Return of the Living Dead and then Return of the Living Dead Part 2. And what surprised me the most was seeing the actors, two actors from the original Return of the Living Dead, in completely different roles, as if like this is somewhat. I was so confused as a kid. I was like, this isn't a sequel. How is this a sequel when it's not even the same characters, but the actors are playing two completely different people, and yet there's some similarities between there, and that like confused the fuck out of me when I finally did watch this movie.
Was that who? So it's been a long time for the first one. Was it like the grave robber guy?
Joey played by Tom Matthews from Friday the 13th, and then James Karen is Ed. Those two in the first movie play workhouse, like they work in a medical workhouse.
Yeah, like it's that medical warehouse thing where they're storing the chemicals, I think, something like that. Okay. Thank you for confirming that, because I was also confused. I was like, am I just misremembering every single detail of these movies? I was like, whatever. I was like, we'll talk about it on the podcast. I'll get it figured out. I could have Googled it, but I wanted to talk about it instead, because I was a little bit like, wait a second. I'm misremembering. So that's why when I was watching it, I'm like, do I consider this a sequel? Is it a requel? Is it like a remake? Like what? Let's talk about it. Like, what do we consider this movie?
It has the same canisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
same canisters, same phone number emblazoned on the front of them.
Okay.
When I think about this now, I think about the time when Stephen King, and I think I told you this off air once, Mary Beth, where I think of this as like when Stephen King wrote The Regulators, and then as Richard Bachman wrote Desperation, and we have those two. Or was it the reverse? I can't remember. But as one, he wrote one, and as his pseudonym, he wrote the other. And they have similar characters, but similar like premise, but they're completely different. And that's how I feel with this movie, is that this feels like a remake of the first one in some ways, because it has some similar motifs in it. The military, the canisters, the tar man, the two lead, the grave robbers in this one. There's like very similar ingredients, and yet it's a completely different movie.
It's very strange to me. I guess it's like, because I kept trying to be like, is this, my brain was working on overdrive to be like, what's the correlation? I always tend to do this, like overthinking these things, and like when there really is a very tenuous connection here, and I think it's just, a money grab from the producer, Tom Fox. Like, he wanted to make a franchise, and he was like, we gotta do it. And the guy who wrote it and directed it, Ken Wiederhorn, I believe, like, just kind of wanted to make it silly, and they said, yeah, go for it. So I guess, sure. It does feel like a much sillier, not for kids, but, like, has that kid vibe, like, gateway horror-y, latchkey kid vibe to it. So it's very...
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
relic.
eating brains is fun. Yeah, that was the...
yeah, obviously.
My takeaway from...
I will say, I always enjoy when a movie is not afraid to put kids in peril. And I love that we have the kids becoming zombies and getting sick. And, like, in the parents' house with the temperature when she puts it under his tongue. And she's like, you're cold. You don't have a fever. I don't understand. You don't have the thermometer under your tongue. And, like, that kind of concept I think is so terrifying. Like, your parents are watching you fall apart. Like, I think that part I think that's an interesting thing to play with in this movie. Obviously. Isn't it? He eats her brain with the braces at that one point when we were talking.
That to me was at the time, an 8-year-old Travis, the scariest part, and even 10-year-old was like the funniest part, you know? But it was amazing, yeah. And that the bully became the zombie. And they kind of tried to hash it out, right? Between the main kid and him. Like, they kind of tried to follow that plot line, and I think...
Yeah.
Tried.
It kind of gets scattered, but at the end I think he electrocutes them, so maybe there's some kind of a character arc about standing up to bullies. When they're zombies, of course.
Right.
You know.
Don't electrocute actual people. Only if they're zombies.
Well, I did find that to be kind of a fun little callback to Night of the Living Dead, where the little girl attacks her mom. So like that, I always love seeing that when the kid turns on their parents, because in reality that would be so incredibly horrifying, right? The idea that your kid is going to potentially eat and devour you is fucked up. But in here, it's really silly.
And Night of the Living Dead was like one of the original, like one of the first. Or one of the big controversies was around the fact that the little girl killed her mom. And people were like, what do you mean killing, like, you know, all that good symbolism, family unit falling apart, younger generation, all that stuff. But I mean, like, so because I know there's like a kind of a weird tense history between Return of the Living Dead and Night of the Living Dead, right? Yeah. With Romero and all that stuff. So, but I still love that even with this, they're continuing the tradition of kids eating parents. I don't know if it's intentional, but I love the trend of every one of these movies having a kid eat a parent. That's very interesting.
What was the tension?
So
wait, what? So Romero got mad. Yeah, what's the back?
Yeah, I was like, Terry, can you explain it better than I can about the weird?
John A. Russo worked with George Romero on Night of the Living Dead, and then he went on to write books. And so I'm not 100% sure about all of the legalities between it, but so there was a fallout between Romero and John Russo, and Romero got to continue making his Dead movies, but Russo got the ability to Living Dead, I believe, was like he got to create the Living Dead series. And so he wanted to take that and make it into Return of the Living Dead. And so he had hired Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien. He wrote the initial story for Alien, and he got him to write it, and he infused a lot of humor into it, and then created his own the Living Dead series, whereas Romero could make Of the Dead. So like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, all of those movies Romero could do, but John Russo had the Living Dead aspect of it, which is really weird, but that's sort of the kind of fallout between the two of them. And I'm not 100% sure why they got into an argument. I think they wanted to take the series in different directions.
So did they hate each other's movies, or?
I don't know, actually.
I wonder what George Romero thought of, Return of the Living Dead, or the reverse,
right.
Dawn of the Dead, or whatever. I'll say this: I didn't see. It's been a while since Return of the Dead Part 1 or whatever, but I don't mind the 90-minute runtime, because we did a midnight screening of is it Dawn of the Dead? What's the shopping mall one?
Yep, Dawn of the Dead.
Good movie. One of the actors was there. Super cool time, but it was longer than I remembered it being. I think it might have. Yeah, it was close
it's
to
very
2 hours
long
running time. Yeah, so I was like, okay, so I appreciated the brevity of what's going on in these Living Dead movies.
Well, and I agree with that. I like how, and I will say that even I'm about to clown on it, but there's a lot of special effects in this movie, and they really do some interesting stuff with zombies, but they butchered the Tar Man. I just have to say that right now. They butchered the Tar Man. The Tar Man in the original is so scary and so gross and goopy and also kind of silly at the same time, and that's why he's so scary. And this one didn't do it. It was just kind of scary, and it wasn't the same, and I just had to say it, because I was really disappointed. I was like, that's it?
Because...
Come on, you gotta at least cover him in tar.
I know.
You gotta have it be goopy.
And I think, like, I honestly, as I was rewatching this one last night to prep for this, I was like, I paused it and went and Googled, because I was like, it's been a couple years, I think, since I've seen Return of the Living Dead, because we covered it on the podcast, but it's been a couple years, and I was like, I don't remember the tar man looking this bad, is what I want to say, because I didn't think the makeup effects on his face are the greatest, and I was like, no, the original tar man is much superior.
I'm Googling as we're talking to this. I now have to see him, and
much goop.
Yeah, he was just kind of funny in this one. Yeah, maybe they ran out of money or something. Maybe
I think like the whole thing with this one is they had a lot more zombies. It feels like, so maybe they did run out of budget, but it just feels like there are some cool parts, like when she shoots him off, like shoots that guy's torso off, and it's like his.
I love that moment.
Spinal cord, like still like wiggling around. And there's obviously some really good effects, but I don't think they didn't have as many like iconic like figures, I guess, than the first one did, for me at least. I don't know. That's
yeah. Like the decapitated head or whatever with the screwdriver through it. That was that stood out, and the cutting the fingers off and stuff at the beginning and the great. Yeah, there's some stuff, but yeah, overall, I wasn't blown away with the tar man, and it was funny looking at the extras though, because it looks like they just threw on like you'll be American Revolutionary, you'll be like a swinger zombie, like here's the extra costumes, go. Even though
and like the zombie makeup looks a little bit like, is it Billy from Hocus Pocus / a little bit Salem's Lot-y.
Right. You're absolutely right. Oh my god, I kept staring at them going, why do they look so familiar to me? And you're right, it does look like Billy from Hocus Pocus.
But again, like, I did look, it's dumb, but like when they throw the hand off of his throat and it just like turns around and flips the bird, like silly things like that. Like I appreciate what they're trying to do with the silliness, but again, it feels like they weren't trying to go for as many scares and more for like silly body gags, which again, like, that's a movie for people, but it's just hard to follow what happened in the first one with this, I think, is like I'm curious how this would have, it's still, I mean, it did okay at the box office-ish, but I'm curious, like, if having the label on it hurt it, or I don't know. Also, I forgot to say this, I have never seen this movie before. This was my first time watching it. I had not seen it before, so...
It's,
this is my first experience.
As an 8-year-old, I can strongly recommend it to, like, and it just is now my wife was like, why are we watching this? Can we turn this on? And I'm like, nope. This was my favorite movie as a kid. It really scared me. And she did like the, I'm sure you're curious, what does Travis Bibble's wife say? She did like the flipping off. She's like, okay, that's funny. That's good. So, there are some high points, but no, it's like they needed, I don't think they hit, once again, as an adult, as an 8-year-old, it was, I'll give it, 10 out of 10. I don't think now that they hit like either the comedy or the horror, like neither of them were quite strong enough, to work. It's like I think they leaned too heavily into comedy, but the jokes weren't quite good enough.
They weren't, but there were some that really, I actually really kind of chuckled at. The doctor, Dr. Mandel, he has some pretty good moments, I have to say. I loved when they're like, they need a car, they're trying to escape, they break into his garage, he's like, we need your car, they're dead, we need your car, and he's like, sounds like you need a hearse. For some reason, maybe it's because at this point I was just sort of like beaten down by some of the comedy that made me laugh. And then like a little bit later he notices one of the zombies and it was a former patient and he says, we ran out of typo, it's not my fault. Like some of those moments I was like, okay, this is kind of silly, but it's working on me a lot better.
But like he also like was delivering them in a funny way. I think some of the actors also just didn't have the best comedic line delivery or like timing, and he had really good funny timing. Like it just he had that vibe of like, okay, I appreciate this character in a horror movie that's like an older guy who's just like constantly cracking jokes and is like, seems like he's in a totally different movie. Like, I love that kind of character, but he really was in an entirely different movie than everyone else.
Yeah.
Good for him, but
apologizing to, I mean, that's a good moment, apologizing to a zombie for you accidentally killing him as their doctor. I mean, yeah, I'll give you that. Like, that's,
I accept that.
That was, yeah.
I also really enjoyed when Brenda, one of the characters who is she's the girlfriend of Joey, Tom Matthews' character, and Ed is turning into a zombie and he's trying to like snap at them, and she's like, Ed, quit it, and she's like scolding him as a zombie. I was like, okay, this is like the kind of energy I was kind of hoping for this movie, and we get little bursts of it here and there, the flicking, the flipping off hand moment, the zombie getting cut in half and then using his arms to like walk. Like, there's some moments in there that I'm like, this is genuinely entertaining and funny. But I think you're right, Mary Beth. I don't think some of the actors maybe have the right comedic timing that Dr. Mandel does, or, you know.
Yeah, it's just like kind of inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bummer, but there are good moments, but it is pretty tonally inconsistent with like what it's trying to achieve exactly.
I think once again, I guess I did a little more research on this, but I just did a little Rotten Tomatoes check, and yeah, it's like Return of the Living Dead Part 1 has like a 95%. Return of the Living Dead Part 2 has 5%. So, yeah, like that, you're going in with like, maybe it's so bad it's good level, I feel like, of expectations for this movie. Because that's a pretty big decline. Yeah. That's like 90% down. That's impressive that they took it in such a different direction. But yeah, it's definitely, yeah. If you go in knowing something's 5%, then yeah, I think it worked. You know, if you told me that was 5%, I might have given it like 8-9%. You know, so
yeah, 5% might be a little low, but you know, I mean, like, come on, Brenda willingly sacrifices her brain to Joey. Beautiful, romantic, just gorgeous, lays her on down and just starts nibbling at her brain. Like, that was my favorite moment. I was like, yes, you know what?
Yeah,
I
that dialogue.
Look, I'm a sucker for a awkward pseudo sex scene that's actually just him eating her brain. Like, that's a 10 out of 10 movie experience for me. It could have gone harder. It could have gone so much harder in what that was, but it's okay. That's fine.
It's a good moment. Would you give up your brain to your husband if he was a zombie? Yeah.
I don't think I would. He wouldn't do it for me. Would you do it for your wife?
That's interesting. My wife's a neurologist, so like she would be into the brain. So that's
there you go.
The perfect person to eat your brain, honestly.
Yeah,
is a neurologist zombie.
If she told me not being a zombie, she needed to eat my brain, I'd be like, well, you're the doctor. All right, so yeah.
You're probably doing something to save someone's brain. Yeah, cool. You just have a little nibble. Like, yeah, fuck it. That's fine.
I do love that dialogue exchange between them, though, where he's like saying that your brain smells so good, so rich and spicy, and her response is, I'm not into dead guys. And he's like, honey, it's only me. And then she's like, okay, take me, baby. It's just, it's that, again, that's the energy I wanted.
Good. It's just, exactly. And there's like these glimmers of these like fully just campy, ridiculously dumb, but like kind of iconic moments. And I just think they were, I always feel like these movies feel nervous to commit to it. You know what I mean? Like there's almost like an anxiety of fully committing to the bit. So they pull back and I'm like, no, you gotta just let it fully commit to the bit. Is really the advice I give everybody. Commit to the bit, everyone. It's better if you just commit all the way, in my opinion.
I'm currently watching Twin Peaks for the first time. And as I was watching this, I like literally stopped and went, oh my God, it's Bobby, because Dana Ashbrook is Tom, the cable repairman in this, and he is Bobby in Twin Peaks. And that was so surprising to me.
Steve walked in, my husband, and was like, is that Bobby? And I was like, sure is. There he is. Travis, are you a Twin Peaks? Are you a Twin Peaks fan?
I did not get into. I've watched a few episodes back in the day, so no, I haven't gotten into it as much. When the cable guy showed up, I thought it was a little horny or something at first, or whatever, but I didn't put the Twin Peaks thing together.
I'm not really a fan of Twin Peaks either, to be perfectly honest. I'm not really enjoying it.
You just say something like that in front of a guest and not expect me to throw a temper tantrum. I'm just kidding. I love Twin Peaks, like, a lot. I get it, though. It's fucking weird. It is not... David Lynch is a weird man, and I love him deeply, but it's just, like, because I love Twin Peaks so much, and Twin Peaks is such, like, a fixture in my mind as this, like, weird thing that I'm obsessed with. Whenever I see someone outside of Twin Peaks, like, in another movie, especially someone who, like, doesn't have a big career, like Dana Ashbrook, I'm like, you don't exist outside of Twin Peaks. What do you mean? Bobby, what are you doing here, Bobby?
Is he a cable guy in Twin Peaks, or what's his...
he's a high school student and a football player, and he's a huge douchebag.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a huge douchebag.
So he's kind of the hero in this, I get, or the, so that's he has some range, I guess.
There you go.
Good for him, good for him.
Speaking of...
If David Lynch would do a zombie movie,
that would be wild. What would that be like, I wonder?
Ooh.
Speaking of range, though, what shocked me on this watch was the realization that Michael Kenworthy, who plays Jesse, was in probably one of the best horror movies that came out in 1988, and in this movie, because he was also in The Blob. He was the little kid in The Blob.
Oh, wow.
The Blob remake.
Wait, was he really?
Yeah, he was the little kid in The Blob remake.
Who got et, right?
No, the brother that survives.
Oh yeah, sorry, I got my children's slayings mixed up.
Yep. He's in The Blob, and then he's in this.
He looked familiar.
He's also apparently he also did a series of commercials. There was this toy that I remember as a kid growing up. I'm trying to think of what it was called. I'm pulling it up right now. Mad Scientist. So like there was this range of Mad Scientist toys aimed at little kids in like the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. And it was like mixing different jellies and stuff to make ooze and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
He was the kid in that commercial too. And on the box of the Mad Scientist box. That was him.
Wow, 1980s was his decade. I wonder where he's at now.
Yeah.
Don't know if I want to know.
Does he drop that? Yeah, I mean, how often do you think he mentions he was a Return of the Living Dead Part 2?
He probably drops The Blob more often than that.
I would think so.
What was his name?
Michael Kenworthy. He holds degrees in theater arts, telecommunications, and broadcasting. He's currently self-employed and works with Walmart on developing novelty items for young people.
Good for him. Get that bag, bud. Just have your normal life. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I loved the punk so much in the first one. It was very weird to not have that kind of more rowdy, wild group. And there's a part where there's a car full of zombies that drives past that feels very much like an homage to all of the punks. And I did love how they referenced the original. And I think there's some like really cool moments in this movie. But again, like it just feels like a bunch of parts that they had some really cool ideas. They just did not know how to sew it all together, which is a bummer. And now I need to watch the third one, which I know is like incredibly different than
I hear the third one's actually entertaining.
I've also heard this. Have you seen the third one, Travis?
No, but now I think I'm going to watch the trailer a couple days ago.
Because that's the one where she's like got a bunch of glass coming out of her face.
Is that the one at the rave?
Oh, I think so. Oh, yeah, and Brian Usna directed it. I forgot that he also directed it.
There's a couple. Oh, wait, no. So there's Return of the Living Dead 3, but then I think what I watched the trailer for is Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave, which is a great fucking title. So I even if it's terrible, that...
Yeah, I think...
Rave to the Grave?
Doesn't even have a tomato score, so that's a...
Oh, yes.
I want to say, I'm not 100% sure if this is correct or not, but I do want to say that one, because there's the Return of the Living Dead, Rave of the Grave, and then Necropolis, which came out in the 2000s. And I want to say that those were done from like the Sci-Fi Channel. I think there were Sci-Fi Channel movies.
Okay.
I want to say.
Fucking Rave to the Grave. That's incredible.
It is a great title.
It's a great title.
But I've heard Return of the Living Dead 3 is actually very entertaining. I mean, Brian Usna, who did Society, like he's a He's a goopy director, so I am curious if how good that would be. But Mary Beth, you did mention the callbacks to the first one, and the moment that I thought was actually quite entertaining in this is when Joey and Ed, they've been doused with it. They're sitting in the back of the car, and Joey's like, I just got this feeling. It's like we've been here before. It's like a dream. You, me, them. And I was like, okay, we're doing a little bit of fourth wall busting, here with because it's the same characters same actors from the first one. Like, I appreciate that. And I was like, I do like, as I'm watching more and more movies, I am seeing like a trend in the late 80s to go more into this meta direction that Scream gets all the credit for doing for like meta. But I'm noticing a whole lot more movies coming up through the 80s that have like these little moments of meta humor in them. And I'm like, I like that. I appreciate that we're kind of acknowledging the elephant in the room in this particular movie. They're
not in the third one, are they?
What's that? No, they're not. Mm-mm.
Okay, that's too bad. If they kept it, that could have been different characters each time.
Well, and I was watching this. Is like, what was the intention behind having the same? I was like, is this one of those things where like you're trying to create a franchise and so you want to have some kind of continuation from the first one, because they all die in the end of the first one. And I was like, so is that what the point is? I was like, are you kind of going for like an Abbott and Costello vibe? Because they do have kind of an Abbott and Costello-ish type of, they kind of, Ed is the older kind of grumpy guy, and Joey / I don't remember what his name was from the first movie, but Joey is sort of like a kind of a clown. I was like, you do have this sort of like odd couple vibe between the two of them. It would be interesting to see that continue. I don't know. I feel like if you're gonna try to make a sequel to what I think is one of the better zombie movies, I love Return of the Living Dead. I think it is a great film. And so I think if you're gonna like try to make a sequel to that, you have to go a little further. And I don't think they distance themselves too much, because there's so many things that I could point to and I'm like, Return of the Living Dead did it better. The military subplot in here, I think Return of the Living Dead had like a more punk rock aesthetic to it, where it's like, fuck the military, and here it's like, yay, they're gonna save us. And I don't know, there's just like, it feels like the opposite side of a coin in some way, of like, this is not doing enough to warrant its existence, I hate to say.
Damn. Shit.
But as a kid, I would have loved this, because again, I that's what I was like keying into when I was watching it last night. I was trying to think, what would this have been like watching as a young kid? And I do think having...
You're thinking, why did Travis Bible say this movie this? Like, what? It's because I was 8, okay?
Yeah, I know.
I was 8.
Leave me alone.
No, I do honestly think that if I saw this at that age, I would have been as enamored with it, because again, we have an entry point with the kid, and that was such a big thing in the 80s.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like the Monster Squad came out the year prior to this. We have, of course, Goonies, classic, but like even the Blob had like kid storylines, and I think that as a kid you latch onto a whole lot more than watching it as an adult. And the kids, I just find as an adult now, the kids are kind of annoying in these movies. But as a kid, it was like an entry point. Absolutely. And I can completely understand why this movie was terrifying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What were they doing in the, were they going to get bodies in the graveyard initially and try to sell them? Is there a market for that? Like, I wasn't even sure what our main...
I was really confused about that too, because he's like, you got to get these heads that have been interred. I'm like, who's buying interred skulls? Like, what? Yeah. Is that a market? Am I in the wrong career field?
In the 80s it was? Yeah, like, I don't... It's
wacky.
It hit a lot, yeah. And then he's trying to, give jewels to his to the girlfriend right off from a dead person's hand, and like, this will change her mind. It's like this ugly bracelet off an old dead corpse, and I'm like,
it's probably going to leave her hand green.
Yeah, it's the best gift.
All right. Well, do we want to wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
All right, Terry. How many romantic brain meals out of 5 do you give Return of the Living Dead Part 2?
This is not one of my favorites. And I do think that it's because I do hold Return of the Living Dead in such high esteem. I do think that first one is really, really good and funny and horrifying. and just like hits every kind of note I would want in like a horror comedy. And this one I don't know. It feels very 1950s in terms of like we have the punk rock of the 80s in Return of the Living Dead, just saying fuck you to the 50s. And then it feels a little regressive in that way, going back to just silliness. I think it's funny. I do think there are moments that are really kind of funny, and I think that some of the effects are really decent. So for me, it's a 2 romantic brain meals. What about you, Mary Beth?
I think I'm also going to have to give it 2 delicious romantic brain meals out of 5. I think it has its merits. I think it's not a good follow-up. It's always so hard to follow movies like Return of the Living Dead. I mean, like, trying to do any follow-up a movie like that, it's like almost impossible. Like Exorcist 2. I mean, it's so hard to try to capture the magic of the first movie a lot of the time. And I think we continue to see that with these franchises as people continue to keep continuing on franchises or starting new franchises. But, you know, I still think it tried to carve out a space for itself. It didn't fully commit to it, but I do appreciate what it was trying to do. And maybe one day someone can specifically remake this one, you know, not the first one, the second one, which would be my favorite thing of all time, is someone remaking Return of the Living Dead Part 2, but none of the other movies, and making it actually like full count. And can't be just to remake that one, not the first or third one, just the second one. So that's my pitch for the day. And on that note, Travis, you have the final word. How many romantic brain meals out of 5 do you give Return of the Living Dead?
8-year-old me would go 5 out of 5.
Hell yeah.
Current me, I can't give a movie I chose a 1. So let's go. I'll give it 2. Okay. 2 romantic brain meals. There was some good stuff in it. It didn't execute properly, but there were some fun moments, and it was a good, you know, nostalgic ride. And, you know, honestly, the main thing around this conversation is I haven't seen Return of the Living Dead Part 1 since I was 8, and at the time I didn't like it, so I have a feeling that's actually a lot better, so I'm going to give that a rewatch, and I'm excited to...
I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, send me an email or something, because I do think that first one I think it's a classic. I think it is really good, and so I'd be curious to hear what older Travis thought over 8-year-old Travis.
Yeah, I don't know if 8-year-old me was that great a movie critic. You know, there are a lot of. I think there's a movie called like Three Ninjas. I like. You know, yep. I think 8-year-olds maybe aren't the best. Maybe that's why they're not writing they're not certified Rotten Tomato critics.
I am curious though, but right before we do sign off, when you rewatch this, because you said it had been like 30 years, did it come back to you from what you were a kid, or did you forget most of the movie?
It came back because I saw it so many times. Like, I hadn't thought about it in a long time, honestly, until I talked to you guys. And no, it did come back, and so that actually I think helped it get that second brain in the rating, because there is like a nostalgia. Like, I remember it. I remember telling all my friends about it. Like, and so it was cool seeing something you haven't seen for that long, and then just remembering like, oh, this, and like, oh yeah, the hand flips them off, and the brain truck, and it was nice remembering all those moments, and how much I appreciated them as an 8-year-old.
Hell yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about Return of the Living Dead Part 2 or 2, depending on where you're at on the web. Who knows? Are you on social media? Where can listeners find you? And the floor is yours to plug away.
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Instagram as the Travis Bible. And follow Chad Gets the Axe also on Instagram. And I guess, it's out September 1st. So I believe that is when this will be airing. So check it out, please. We're an independent movie, so everything helps us. So please give it a rent, or buy it on your favorite, digital platform, and, give it, that's my plug. It's hopefully good. You guys liked it. It's probably good. Better than Return of the Living Dead 2. So I think it nails.
Yes. Yeah.
I think we can say that definitively.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wait, your cat has appeared and my cat has appeared at the same time. They share a single brain cell. Anyway.
We'll do a cat podcast sometime.
There you go.
So, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What's your vibe on Return of the Living Dead 2/Part 2? We would love to know. You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And we don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Scarred for Life Podcast. And on Blue Sky, what's our Blue Sky at again, Terry?
At Scarred Podcast, the same as Twitter.
At Scarred Podcast. So, all over the web, guys. We're everywhere.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want to help support us, we are on Patreon.
We are. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. Most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children!
When you pick up some scratches, cause you want a fun break, the playful way you scratch is the next choice you should make. You can make your dog's leg kick and scratch with that. You could even grab a laser pointer and use your cat. You can build yourself a homemade scratching machine, or use a piece from your chess set. Go ahead, grab the queen. Scratch like a DJ with your record player. A cactus could scratch off that scratchable layer. Cause when it comes to scratching, there's a million playful ways. Thanks to scratchers from the California Lottery, a little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system. If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served. Hi, I'm Detective Dave. I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood. So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished. From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.